after losing a round of truth or dare. Ezra Everton pointed at me from across the room like it was nothing. Her, the broken girl, at the whole art institute for fun. The room exploded with laughter. Everyone waited for me to get dumped on the spot and humiliated. I was already about to tell him to go screw himself, when bright red floating comments suddenly blew up in front of me. Don't say no, say yes. That's a walking jackpot. Make his heart race for 1 second, and you'll unlock a $100,000 payout. I'm scream. Ezra's family is crazy rich. One tiny leak from his wallet could build a whole new wing. For Evervale Home. For real. He acts arrogant, but he's secretly such a softy. Win him over and you're basically set for life. Evervale Home, the orphanage. 100 grand. My eyes widened. I looked at Ezra's ridiculously handsome, seriously punchable face, and swallowed the go to hell sitting on my tongue. Then I met his amused stare and smiled sweetly, hiding the edge in my eyes. I stepped up and hooked my arm through his. Sure, babe. For a second, the private room went completely silent. Ezra lifted a brow. He clearly hadn't expected someone as quiet as me to play along, but I didn't care because Grace Fakey, the pretentious campusette girl who started this whole dare, looked seconds away from exploding me a Madden. Wow, you'll really go along with anything, huh? Ezra's obviously joking. Don't tell me you're actually taking this seriously. LOL. Girl spiraling. She tried to humiliate Mia and got hit with the reverse card instead. I'm dead. Don't back down, Mia. Ezra hates fake girls. The more real you are, the more he'll like you. Huh. There's a perk like that. The comments kept flying past like they were yelling at me personally. Listen to me grab the most expensive drink on the table, post him, and tell him you're taking over his money. Exactly. Ezra's completely touch-starved. He likes getting bossed around, especially about money. That's the cute part. Trust me, if you act like you own him, he'll make you rich. It sounded insane, but for the money, for the leaking roof at Evervale Home, I went for it. I grabbed the red wine, poured myself a glass, and filled one for him, too. If I'm your one-day girlfriend, shouldn't I control your money? I said casually, this wine is expensive. Drink less, save up, so you can marry me. Grace rolled her eyes, obviously about to mock the broke girl who'd never seen real money. But Ezra just stared at me for a second, before his mouth curved into a grin. Lazy, amused, dangerous, sure. Whatever you say, bossy girlfriend. Then he actually set his glass down. He looked at the group around us. You heard her. My girl says no drinking. The room exploded. Grace finally snapped. She yanked out her phone and sneered at me. Mia, what's your account number? I'll pay for this round. I'll send you $1,000. Take it and stop embarrassing yourself. I almost laughed. Then I glanced at the comments. Ignore her. $1,000 is pocket change. Ezra's about to shut her down. Face slap. Countdown starts now. Right on cue, Ezra snapped his lighter shut and looked up. Grace, the embarrassing one. Here is you. His voice stayed lazy, but the room instantly went quiet. Since when do you get to throw money at my girlfriend? He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me. Transferred. 3 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Deposit received $50,000 balance. $50,235.05. My hand shook so hard, I almost dropped my phone. Ezra leaned in, his voice low and warm against my ear. One-day girlfriend allowance enough. If not, I'll send more. I froze and pinched my thigh. Yeah, that hurt. The comments instantly lost their minds. I told you he's a jackpot guy. Mia literally hit the lottery. Ezra, look at me. I can be your one-day girlfriend, too. I don't need $50,000. $5,000 is enough. Girl above me, move. I'll do it for $500 and free home-cooked meals. I fought down a smile. Still fully committed to the act, I looked at him with fake devotion. It's enough. You're so good to me. Seeing my completely undisguised greed, the amusement, in Ezra's eyes, only deepened. When the party finally ended, Ezra ignored the look Grace kept throwing him, obviously hoping he'd drive her home, and insisted on taking me back to my dorm instead. As we walked out, Grace muttered near the entrance. Some people can play dress up all they want, but it won't change what they really are. Let's see how hard she cries tomorrow. I just smiled and climbed into his 7-figure supercar. The engine roared to life. Neon lights blurred past the windows. Ezra drove with one hand on the wheel side, profile unfairly gorgeous under the street lights. This wasn't the first time I'd seen him up close. Back at school, I'd watch him from the studio windows while he walked across campus. Surrounded by people, the arrogant rich heir everyone knew, and me, the invisible art girl juggling part-time jobs. If not for that stupid dare, we would have stayed 2 lines that never crossed. But tonight changed that. Because of him, the kids at Evervale Home had next year's tuition covered. At a red light, I flashed him a sweet, genuinely grateful smile. Something shifted in his expression. His fingers tapped against the steering wheel. Then he looked over at me, gaze dark and steady.
Mia?
I blinked. There was a hint of curiosity in his voice. Have you been secretly staring at me this whole time, huh? I froze. I literally just made 50 grand off this man. If I denied it now, was he gonna been more requested back? Maybe my silence lasted too long. One of his brows slowly lifted as he looked at me. My heart tightened. I pulled my sketchbook from my bag and handed it to him. Since you noticed, you can have it. He took it casually and flipped it open beneath the reading light. Every page was him playing basketball, smoking, sleeping under a tree. I'd always told myself I drew them to sell his fan art to his fangirls. Only I knew how hard my heart beat with every sketch. Since I'd already been caught, I figured I might as well commit. I let out a quiet sigh. I've liked you for a long time. I just never had the guts to say it. So I drew you instead and pretended we were close. Then I glanced at the floating comments. Mia, art comes from life. Also from needing money. And okay, maybe from thinking he was hot. Ezra, probably. She's been obsessed with me forever. She even knows what I look like asleep. Mia, money. I need money. Ezra. She's totally in love with me. He slowly closed the sketchbook. His expression barely changed, but he couldn't fully hide the curved tugging at his lips. Another comment popped up. He's acting calm, but internally absolutely losing it. The car rolled to a stop outside my dorm. I checked the time, almost curfew. To secure my win, I put on a look of lingering reluctance to leave him,
Pulled a tin of candy from my bag.
and I pressed it into his hand. I had a really good time today. This is for you. Smoke less. Eat candy instead. Then I got out and shut the door behind me. The comments kept flying.
Watch.
Ezra's gonna get home, hold that candy like it's a sacred artifact, and think she cares about my health.
She's in love with me.
He's absolutely waking up at midnight to eat one. And hate himself for almost missing a girl who loves him this much. I immediately sped up, scared that if I walked too slow, the 50 grand might magically disappear. Right before entering the dorm, I glanced back. The supercar was still parked there, headlights cutting through the dark like lovesick eyes. That night, I hugged my phone and stared at my bank balance, with the dumbest grin on my face. What I didn't know was that the real billionaire family chaos was only just starting. And Grace's little "let's see how she cries tomorrow" definitely wasn't an empty threat. The next morning on my way to my studio job, a Rolls-Royce pulled up and blocked my path. The window rolled down. A gorgeous face appeared, elegant, sharp, rich enough to ruin lives. Lisa Everton, Ezra's sister. The city's infamous fashion queen, ruthless, impossible to please. My heart immediately tensed. Oh my God, is she about to throw a check at me and tell me to stay away from her brother? I knew this storyline. As I walked over, Misa took off her sunglasses and gave me a slow once-over. With razor-sharp eyes. You're Mia Madden,
She asked. Get in.
I'm taking you somewhere. The comments instantly started freaking out. Mia, don't panic. That's your future sister-in-law. She looks terrifying, but she's just an overprotective sister to Ezra. Tonight's the big checkpoint. Their grandpa is secretly watching. Pass this, and the money multiplies by 10. Don't back out when Lisa over. And you're basically untouchable in the Everton family 10 times. Wouldn't that make it 500 grand? I instantly perked up, took a breath and flashed her a sweet but confident smile.
Hi.
I heard Ezra's sister was gorgeous. But honestly, you're even prettier in person than in magazines. And those earrings look incredible on you. They make you seem really powerful. Lisa's I-see expression softened a little. Something close to approval flickering in her eyes. You're bold, she said. And you know how to talk. I heard you got Ezra under control last night. That brat barely listens to our dad. But he actually listened to you.
Good.
I like you. Smart. Very smart. The Ice Queen almost smiled. Billionaire family. Entry pass secured. The car stopped outside a luxury designer boutique. Lisa moved fast, ordering the staff to bring out every new gown from the season collection. There's a charity gala tonight,
She said.
You'll be attending as Ezra's date. Don't embarrass him. She motioned toward the rows of insanely expensive dresses.
Pick one.
I checked a price tag and almost lost the ability to breathe. Instinctively, I reached for something simple. Lisa frowned immediately. Too boring. You won't own the room in that, right? Then Ezra walked over and casually tossed a shimmering, galaxy-colored gown toward me. This one, he said. It shows off your figure. Then, he dropped a jewelry box beside it. And keep the jewelry. Inside was a diamond set so bright it was basically blinding. I'm literally dying of jealousy.
Mia, congrats.
I'm jealous to the point of physical pain. That's not an evil rich sister-in-law. That's a fairy godmother. When I stepped out in the gown, Lisa's eyes instantly lit up. She walked over and adjusted the hem herself. Tiny waist, long legs, nice skin. You've got the looks for this. Her lips curled slightly. And that grace. Fakey never liked her.
She's always putting on an act.
You're way easier to look at. Then her gaze sharpened. Tonight, I want you to outshine everyone. Understood? I nodded without hesitation. I won't embarrass the Everton family. Suddenly, Lisa picked up a call.
What?
She sounded shocked. Ezra took that limited edition helmet out of the display case. She hung up, then looked at me thoughtfully. That brat isn't planning to give it to you, is he? He treats that helmet like his firstborn. My heart skipped. A helmet? He hadn't given me anything like that. The comments immediately lost it. LOL. He's probably too shy to give it to her yet. And hiding it until the perfect moment. That's the helmet he won his championship with. There's only one romantic keepsake incoming. I stayed quiet and lowered my gaze.
Pretending to look shy.
Lisa patted my hand lightly. All right, since he's chosen you, I won't interfere. Then she smirked. Come on, let's head to the gala and give those socialites something to choke on. The luxury car rolled into the estate. Camera flashes blowing up the night like daylight. Inside, the gala sparkled with gold and crystal. Perfume and silk filled the air. The second I walked in on Ezra's arm, every head turned away. He wore a black custom suit, his hair slicked back, sharp features impossible to miss. Then he looked at me. Surprise flashed across his face before he looked away fast, the tips of his ears turning red. The comments exploded.
Oh.
Who's blushing? I'm not naming names. Ezra's inner voice. A girl looks gorgeous. Every guy staring at her can lose their eyes. The height difference, the visuals, they look straight out of a billionaire romance. I glanced down. My dress was a little too long. I almost tripped. Ezra caught me instantly and pulled me into his arms. His warm hands settled against my waist, sending a shiver through me. Clumsy. He sounded annoyed, but didn't let go. If anything, he pulled me closer. Stay near me. Don't wander off. I lowered my voice. Ezra, you look really handsome tonight. He stopped for half a second, wallowing hard. Shut up. Don't butter me up.
Oh.
We barely made it inside when Grace walked over with a wine glass in hand. She was clearly dressed to impress, but next to my starry gown, she barely stood out. Ezra Mia is dressed pretty expensively tonight. Rented, right? Better hope she doesn't ruin it. She could never pay for the damage. She covered her mouth with a laugh, jealousy written all over her face. I was just about to clap back. Ezra beat me to it. Ice cold. My sister gave it to her. You got a problem with that? Grace stiffened. Lisa gave it to her. Yeah, right. How's that impossible? Lisa cut in as she stepped beside me. Me as my guest picked out everything she's wearing myself. Unlike you, showing up in a knockoff from last season. Aren't you scared people will notice? Grace's face went bright red. Whispers and quiet laughs spread through the crowd. She stomped off with watery eyes. That was insanely satisfying. Lisa's iconic full female lead protection mode unlocked. I'm obsessed. Grace came to start drama and got publicly destroyed instead. Lisa winked at me before heading off to greet the other guests. I let out a breath and looked at Ezra. He was staring at the diamond necklace around my neck.
What?
I asked, tilting my head slightly. Ezra's gaze lingered on the hollow of my throat, where the diamond necklace rested against my collarbone. Under the brilliant chandeliers of the grand ballroom, the diamonds threw sharp, fractured light across his face, highlighting the tense line of his jaw. For a second, his fingers twitched at his side, as if he wanted to reach out but was holding himself back. In front of my eyes, the bright red comments began to scroll by, faster and denser than before. User_9021. Oh my god, he's staring at her collarbone. He wants to adjust the necklace so badly, but he's terrified of touching her skin. System_pro, he's touch-starved, remember? A gentle brush of your fingers against his hand right now will send his heart rate through the roof. Do it. Unlock the $20,000 first touch bonus. Rich Girl 99. Look at his ears, they're still pink. He acts like a wild wolf, but he's literally just a golden retriever in a custom suit. I suppressed a smirk. If the floating comments were to be believed, Ezra Everton, the most feared, arrogant heir on campus, was currently a bundle of raw nerves. I took a slow breath, letting the hem of my starry gown sweep the marble floor. As I took half a step closer to him, the scent of wood smoke and expensive cologne drifted from him, wrapping around me. I reached up, my fingers brushing against the cold diamonds, and deliberately let my hand slip, acting as though the clasp was irritating me. The clasp is a little tight, I whispered, looking up at him through my eyelashes. Can you help me, Ezra? Ezra's eyes darkened. He didn't answer immediately, but his shadow fell over me. As he stepped behind my back, the sudden heat of his chest hovering just inches from my bare shoulders made my own breath hitch. His fingers, long, calloused from driving supercars and playing sports, gently lifted my hair. His knuckles brushed against the sensitive skin of my neck. System notification. Target's heart rate, 135 BPM. Warning. Rapid increase. Detected. User underscore 4421 screaming. Look at his hands shaking. He's trying so hard to be precise, but he's losing his mind. Wealthy underscore path, ding. $20,000 bonus unlocked. Current balance, $70,235.05. A small shiver ran down my spine, and this time, it wasn't entirely fake. Ezra's touch was surprisingly gentle, almost reverent, as if he were handling a piece of fragile porcelain rather than the quiet, broke art girl he'd dragged along as
A dare.
there. His voice was lower than usual, a rough murmur near my ear. Don't move around so much. You're too clumsy. I'm only clumsy around you, I retorted softly, turning back to face him. He stared at me, his lips twitching into a faint, reluctant smile.
But before he
Could speak, the atmosphere in the ballroom shifted. The murmuring crowd parted, and an oppressive silence fell over the room. An elderly man, walking with a silver-headed cane but carrying himself with the posture of a military general, entered the hall. It was Arthur Everton, the patriarch of the Everton family and the man who held the keys to the entire empire. Beside me, Ezra's posture stiffened instantly. The lazy, amused boy vanished, replaced by a cold, guarded young man. Plot underscore armor underscore active. Attention. Main quest checkpoint. The Patriarchs. Evaluation. Arthur Everton is highly skeptical of anyone near his grandchildren. Reward. 10x multiplier on your next transaction if successful. Insider underscore info. Do not play the victim. Do not pretend you don't care about money. Arthur has spent 80 years dealing with hypocrites who claim they love his family for their souls. He respects raw, unadulterated ambition. I swallowed hard. My knuckles turned white against the fabric of my dress.
10
times the next transaction? If Ezra threw another chunk of change my way, a 10 times multiplier could secure Evervale Home's entire future. Arthur's sharp, gray eyes swept the room, ignoring the bowing socialites, before locking directly onto Ezra and me. He began to walk toward us, his cane clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. Grandpa, Lisa greeted him, stepping up with her usual effortless grace though. Her eyes remained watchful. You made it. Arthur gave Lisa a brief nod of approval before his gaze settled on me.
Up.
Close, his face was lined with the harshness of a man who had built a dynasty. From nothing. He looked like the kind of person who could see through a lie before it even left your lips. So, Arthur's voice was dry, carrying a natural authority that made the surrounding guests hold their breath. This is the girl Ezra spent $50,000 on in a single night. Grace Fakey, who had been hovering near the edge of the crowd nursing her bruised ego, suddenly perked up. She took a step forward, her voice dripping with fake
Concern.
Elder Mr. Everton, Mia is a student at our institute. She's very hardworking. She manages several part-time jobs just to make ends meet. I'm sure she didn't mean to take so much of Ezra's money. She probably just didn't know the etiquette of our social circle. It was a thinly veiled attempt to brand me as a low-class opportunist in front of the family patriarch. Ezra's eyes flashed with a dangerous heat. Grace, shut your. Let her speak, Ezra. Arthur interrupted, his voice quiet but absolute.
He
Looked at me, his eyes narrowing into cold slits. Well, Miss Madden?
My
Grandson is young and impulsive. He treats money like water. But I do not.
tell
Me. What is it you want from Ezra? His affection? Or his bank account? The silence in the room was suffocating. Everyone waited for me to stutter, to cry, or to deliver some cliché line about how money doesn't matter as long as we have love. I looked at the red comments floating around Arthur's head. User underscore 009, tell him the truth. Arthur loves business-minded pragmatists.
he
Thinks romantic love is a temporary chemical imbalance. System underscore pro, be bold. The bigger the risk, the bigger the payout. I took a deep breath, letting go of Ezra's arm, and stood straight.
I met
Arthur's terrifying gaze directly, without flinching. Both, Mr. Everton, I said, my voice clear and steady. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Grace's eyes widened in sheer disbelief, a smug smile beginning to form on her lips. She thought I had just dug my own grave. But if I had to choose, I continued, my expression completely calm. I would.
Choose his bank account first.
Affection is volatile. It can change with a mood or a rumor. But the Everton family's financial stability is a matter of public record. It is much more reliable. Ezra turned his head to stare at me, his jaw dropping slightly. Lisa raised an eyebrow, a slow, amused smirk spreading across her face. Arthur remained silent for 3 long seconds. His face was unreadable. Then, slowly, his shoulders began to shake. He burst into a hearty, booming laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. Ha, honest. Arthur struck his cane against the floor. At least you have the spine to say it. Every girl Ezra has ever brought home has tried to convince me. She only cares about his kind heart, while staring at my watch. You girl are a pragmatist. I like pragmatists. He turned his sharp gaze back to Ezra. She wants your money, Ezra. What are you going to do about it? Ezra recovered his composure, his lips curving into that familiar, arrogant
line.
He stepped closer to me, his hand settling firmly on the small of my back, pulling me against his side. If she wants it, I'll earn more, Ezra said, his voice ringing with absolute confidence. It's not like we're running out. System notification, quest completed. The Patriarch's evaluation, S-rank. System_pro, multiplier activated, 10x. Arthur_Everton_trust. Transferred $100,000 to Ezra's personal ledger for educational encouragement. Ezra's inner voice, she likes my money?
Good.
I have plenty of it.
I'll
make sure she never has to look at anyone else's. System notification. Ezra has initiated a transfer of $100,000 to you. Multiplier applied, 10x. Net deposit, $1 million. My phone buzzed in my small clutch bag. I didn't even need to look at it.
$1
million. My heart did a violent flip. The leaking roof at Evervale Home? Fixed. The kids. Tuition for the next 10 years? Secured. The heating system, the playground, the food budget, all of it completely resolved in a single evening. I looked at Ezra, and for the first time, my sweet smile wasn't entirely an act. My eyes shone with genuine, overwhelming relief. Ezra, seeing the sudden brightness in my eyes, seemed to misinterpret it. His expression softened, his hand on my waist tightening slightly. Told you, he murmured under his breath. I've got you covered. The gala progressed, but the atmosphere around me had completely changed. I was no longer the charity case or the quiet art girl. I was the girl who had openly admitted to wanting the Everton fortune and had been rewarded with the Patriarch's laughter and a $1 million transfer. But Grace Fakey wasn't finished. To someone like Grace, who had spent her entire life carefully crafting a pristine, upper-class image, my sudden ascent was an intolerable insult. While Ezra was pulled away by his father, Marcus Everton, to speak with some prominent investors, Grace cornered me near the outdoor terrace. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and rain, a stark contrast to the heavy perfume inside. You think you've won, don't you, Mia? Grace sneered, her fingers gripping her wine glass so tightly her knuckles were white. You think because Ezra is playing along with this joke, you're actually one of us? You're a charity case. From Evervale. An orphan. If the media finds out the heir of the Everton family is dating a girl who doesn't even know who her parents are, the scandal will ruin him. I leaned against the stone balustrade, looking out over the manicured gardens. User_3321, here she goes again. She's so predictable. Drama_lover, Mia, don't even waste your breath. Look behind her. Ezra is already coming back, and he's holding something. System_tip, the limited edition championship helmet is in his hands. This is his most prized possession. If he gives it to you publicly, it's a declaration of absolute protection. I didn't say a word. I just looked at Grace with a cold, detached pity. That silence drove her insane. Why aren't you saying anything? Grace hissed, taking a step closer. I can expose you in a single post. I can write about how you've been using your art projects to stalk Ezra, how you manipulated him into giving you money. Expose what exactly? A cold, heavy voice shattered the quiet of the terrace. Grace froze. She turned around slowly to find Ezra standing in the doorway. His suit jacket was slightly unbuttoned, his tie loosened, but his expression was terrifyingly dark. In his left hand, he carried a matte black helmet with gold detailing, the very helmet he had used to win the National Grand Prix the previous year. Ezra. Grace's voice trembled. I was just telling her. I heard what you were telling her, Ezra said, stepping onto the terrace. He walked past Grace as if she were nothing but air, stopping right in front of me. Without a word, he held out the helmet. For me? I asked, looking at the heavy, beautifully crafted piece of racing
Gear.
You told me to stop smoking and buy candy, Ezra muttered, his eyes darting away for a split second, a hint of his usual stubbornness returning. This is the helmet from my championship run. It's the only thing I have that isn't bought with my family's money. I earned it myself. User underscore 8871. He's giving her his soul. In the racing world, giving someone your championship helmet is basically a marriage proposal. Rich girl 99. I'm crying. He's saying, my family's money is great, but this is the real me, and I'm giving it to you. I reached out and took the helmet. It was surprisingly heavy, cool to the touch, carrying the faint scent of leather and gasoline. Ezra then turned his gaze back to Grace. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by an icy glare that made Grace take a step back. You want to talk about scandals, Grace? Ezra asked, his voice dangerously quiet. My family owns the land your father's company is built on. If I hear one more word about me as background, or if a single rumor gets leaked to the press, I'll make sure your father is looking for a new office space by tomorrow morning. Am I clear? Grace's face went entirely pale. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out.
She
nodded quickly, turned on her heels, and practically fled back into the ballroom. Ezra let out a quiet, annoyed breath, running a hand through his slicked back hair, instantly messing up the perfect style his stylist had spent an hour on. She's annoying, he muttered. Thank you, Ezra, I said softly, holding the helmet against my chest.
For this.
And for standing up for me. Ezra looked at me, his dark eyes searching my face. You don't need to thank me. You're my one-day girlfriend, remember? I don't let people mess with what's
mine.
My heart gave a strange, unexpected throb. What's mine? The red comments in front of me began to flicker gently, almost like fading embers. User underscore 102. She's falling for him. Look at her eyes. System underscore pro. Warning. Emotional attachment detected. Remember, Mia, this started as a game for survival and Evervale. Don't lose your head. I lowered my gaze, clutching the helmet tighter.
Right.
One day, girlfriend. The drive back to the dorms was quiet. The engine of the Koenigsegg purred like a sleeping beast beneath us, the neon lights of the city's streetlights casting long, liquid shadows across the dashboard. The heavy helmet sat on my lap, my fingers tracing the gold accents. Why do you keep drawing me? Ezra asked suddenly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I blinked, pulled out of my thoughts. What? In your sketchbook, he said, his voice quiet. You said you did it to sell fan art to the girls at school. But you don't sell them, do you? Lisa checked. None of your sketches have ever been posted online or sold in any student forums. My stomach dropped. I had forgotten how thorough Lisa could be. System underscore tip. He's testing you. He wants to know if you actually liked him before the money, or if it was all a calculation. Tell him the truth about why you drew him. It's the only way to keep his trust. I looked down at the helmet. I drew you because you were the only person on campus who looked as lonely as I felt. Ezra's foot drifted off the accelerator for a fraction of a second, the car slowing slightly before regaining its smooth pace. You're always surrounded by people, Ezra. I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. But you never look at them. You look through them. When I sat by the studio window and watched you on the courtyard, you looked like a ghost in a crowd of living people. I started drawing you because I wanted to see if I could capture that look. The look of someone who has everything but wants nothing of it. The car rolled to a silent stop at a red light. Ezra turned his head to look at me. The arrogant, untouchable air was gone. In his place was just a boy, his dark eyes filled with a raw, searching vulnerability that made it hard for me to breathe. You're dangerous, Mia Madden, he said softly, his hand reaching out. He didn't grab my hand. Instead, his thumb gently brushed against my cheek, tracing the line of my jaw. You see too much. System notification. Target's heart rate, 142 BPM. User underscore 992. This isn't a game anymore. He's completely, utterly in love with her. System underscore pro. Warning. Target's emotional investment has reached 90%. If you break his heart now, the consequences will be severe. The light turned green, but Ezra didn't look back at the road immediately. He slowly pulled his hand away, his chest rising and falling in a deep breath, before navigating the car through the gates of my dormitory. As I got out of the car, carrying the $1 million check in my bag and the championship helmet in my arms, I felt a heavy weight settling in my chest. This was supposed to be a jackpot. A game of truth or dare that turned into a financial miracle. But as I watched the taillights of his supercar disappear into the darkness, I realized that Ezra Everton's heart was far more expensive than any sum of money I could ever extract from his wallet. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of activity. I transferred $500,000 to the Evervale Home account immediately. The orphanage director, Mrs. Gable, called me in tears, unable to believe that an anonymous donor had suddenly cleared all their debts, paid for the roof repairs, and established a permanent scholarship fund for the kids. I stood in the courtyard of Evervale, watching the children play on the newly renovated playground equipment. For the first time in my life, I felt a deep sense of peace. But that peace was short-lived. On Thursday afternoon, a sleek black sedan, different from Ezra's supercar or Lisa's luxury tourer, pulled up to the gates of the orphanage. A tall man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit stepped out.
He wore
Wire-rimmed glasses, and his features were a colder, older version of Ezra's. It was Marcus Everton, Ezra's father. System warning. Danger. Boss encounter. Marcus Everton, CEO of Everton Holdings. He is cold, calculating, and values the family's social standing above all else. System_Pro. Emergency quest. Save Evervale Home from acquisition. Payout. $2 million. Task. Survive the negotiation with Marcus Everton without compromising your relationship with Ezra. Marcus walked into the small, clean office of the orphanage, his eyes taking in the worn furniture with a clinical, detached interest. He didn't sit down.
He
simply stood, waiting for me to enter. Miss Madden, he said, his voice like dry autumn leaves. I believe you know who I am. Mr. Everton, I said, closing the door behind me. To what do I owe the honor? Marcus reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a sleek leather folder.
He
laid it on the desk between us. My father, Arthur, is an old man who enjoys novelty, Marcus said coldly.
He
found your honesty amusing at the gala. But I am not my father. I run a multinational corporation, and I do not tolerate liabilities near my son. He opened the folder, revealing a land acquisition contract. Evervale Home sits on a prime piece of suburban real estate, Marcus continued, his eyes locking onto mine. Everton Holdings has recently acquired the debt of the charity that owns this land. By next week, I can have this entire facility demolished to make way for a luxury residential complex. Or I can sign this deed over to you permanently. He pulled out a second document, a non-disclosure and separation agreement. Sign this, take a check for $2 million and leave the country. Transfer to an art school in Paris. I will fund your education, your living expenses, and secure this orphanage's safety forever. If you refuse, the children of Evervale will be relocated to state facilities by the end of the month, and your name will be blacklisted from every art gallery in the country. My hands began to shake. The sheer power of the Everton family was terrifying. With a single stroke of a pen, he could destroy the only home I had ever known. User_112. Oh my god, the classic, take the money and leave trope.
But
this is real. He's threatening the kids. System_Pro. Do not sign. If you sign, the quest fails, and the system will
shut down.
Look closely at Marcus's posture. He isn't just threatening you. He's testing your leverage. What does Ezra have that Marcus wants? I stared at the documents. My mind raced. What did Ezra have that Marcus wanted? Insider_info. Marcus needs Ezra to sign the inheritance transfer agreement for the Everton Racing Division. Ezra refuses to sign it because he wants to keep his independence. Ezra will only listen to one person, you. I took a deep, steadying breath. I looked up at Marcus, letting the fear drain from my face, replacing it with the cold, calculating expression I had used during my first interaction with Ezra. You're a very smart businessman, Mr. Everton, I said, my voice quiet but
sharp.
But you've made a miscalculation. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what is that? You think Ezra is the one holding the leash in our relationship, I said, leaning forward, resting my hands on the desk. But Ezra listened to me when I told him to stop drinking. He gave me his championship helmet, the very helmet he swore he would never give to anyone. If I leave for Paris, Ezra will not stay here and inherit your company. He will follow me. Or worse, he will completely destroy his relationship with you, and you will lose your only heir to the racing division. Marcus's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint appearing behind his glasses. Are you threatening me, Miss Madden? No, I replied, a calm, steady smile appearing on my face. I'm offering a
partnership.
You want Ezra to take over the racing division and stabilize the family's assets. I want Evervale Home to be safe, and I want Ezra to be happy. Keep your $2 million. Give me the deed to this land, and I will make sure Ezra signs the management transfer for the racing division, on the condition that he retains 51% ownership and final decision-making power. Marcus stared at me. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the old wall clock. Then a slow, appreciative smile crept onto Marcus's face. It was the same smile I had seen on Arthur and Ezra, but older, colder, and filled with a dark satisfaction. "You really are a piece of work, Mia Madden," Marcus said, closing the folder. "You have the mind of an Everton. It's a pity you weren't born into a family with actual resources." System notification. Negotiation successful. Marcus Everton's respect
Gained.
System_pro. Ding. Emergency quest completed. Payout. $2 million pending. Transfer. Deed to Evervale Home secured. "I will have my lawyers draft the deed transfer," Marcus said, turning toward
The door.
"But remember this, girl. If Ezra fails to sign that agreement by the end of the week, I will personally see to it that you lose everything." The door clicked shut behind Marcus, leaving me alone in the quiet office.
My
Legs finally gave out, and I sank into the wooden chair, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. User_7712. I couldn't even breathe. "Mia, you are a literal genius. You just played the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate like a violin." System_pro. Payout of $2 million has been successfully routed through 3 offshore trusts to secure anonymity. Current balance, $3,070,235.05. "You are officially a millionaire, Mia." I looked at the number on my screen, but the joy was hollow. I had secured Evervale. I had saved the kids, but I had done it by trading Ezra's freedom. I had promised his father that I would get Ezra to sign the racing division papers, the very papers that Ezra had spent years fighting against to maintain his independence from his family's corporate shadow. System warning. Incoming target, Ezra Everton. He is currently outside the orphanage. Heart rate, 110 BPM. Emotion, agitated. I stiffened, standing up quickly and walking to the window. Outside, the roaring engine of Ezra's Koenigsegg cut through the quiet afternoon. He parked haphazardly near the gates, throwing the door open and walking into the courtyard with long, furious strides. The children playing on the swing stopped to stare at him, but he didn't even notice them. His eyes were locked on the office door. He burst in a second later, his hair messy from the wind, his leather jacket half unzipped. "Did my father come here?" he demanded, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes scanning my face with a frantic intensity. "Mia, did he do something to you? Did he threaten you?" "Ezra, calm down," I said, placing my hands on his chest, feeling the wild, erratic thumping of his heart. "Don't tell me to calm down," he shouted, though his grip on my shoulders softened instantly, as if he were afraid of hurting me. "My assistant told me. His car was spotted near the orphanage. He does this to everyone. Anyone who gets close to me, he tries to buy them off or destroy them." "What did he say to you?" I looked at his beautiful, furious face. The arrogant air was completely gone. He was just a boy terrified of losing the one real thing he had found in his gilded cage. "He offered me $2 million to leave the country," I said softly. Ezra froze. His hands dropped from my shoulders, his eyes turning hollow, a dark, agonizing despair settling into his features. "And did you take it?" User_9901. "No. Look at his face. He's actually breaking." "Mia, tell him." System_pro. Warning. High emotional volatility detected. If the target's trust drops below 50%, the system will permanently lock. I took his hands in mine. His fingers were ice cold. "I didn't take his money, Ezra," I said, looking directly into his eyes. "But I made a deal with him." Ezra blinked, a flicker of hope returning to his dark eyes. "A deal?" "I told him I would get you to sign the management transfer papers for the racing division," I whispered, my heart aching as I said the words.
In
exchange, he's giving me the deed to Evervale Home permanently. The orphanage will be safe forever." Ezra stared at me, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, and finally, to a quiet, complicated sadness. You traded my freedom for this place?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "No," I said, stepping closer, my voice rising with a desperate earnestness.
I
"Negotiated for your protection. I made sure you retain 51% ownership and final decision-making power over the racing division. Your father can't control your races anymore, Ezra. He can't force you out of the cockpit. You'll run the division, but you'll run it on your own terms. I didn't sell you out. I wanted to save both of us." Ezra didn't speak. He looked down at our joined hands, his thumbs slowly rubbing against the back of my knuckles. "You did all that?" he asked softly. "Against my father? I had to," I said, a tear finally slipping down my cheek. I couldn't let him destroy this place. And I couldn't let him take you away from me. The words slipped out before I could stop them. They weren't part of a script. They weren't guided by the floating red comments. System notification. Target's heart rate, 156 BPM. Emotion, absolute. Devotion. User underscore 001, she said it. She said, take you away from me. I'm screaming. This is too sweet. Rich girl 99, the system is glitching. The love index is at 100%. Ezra let out a low, shaky breath. Before I could say anything else, he pulled me into his arms, burying his face in the crook of my neck. His grip was incredibly tight, as if he were trying to merge our two bodies into one. You're an idiot, Mia Madden, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion.
You didn't need to make a deal with him.
If you had just asked me, I would have bought this whole city for you. I don't need the whole city, I whispered, wrapping my arms around his waist, breathing in his familiar scent. Just this place. And you. The final confrontation was set for Friday night. To formalize the agreement, Marcus Everton had invited us to the private Everton family estate, not a grand gala filled with socialites, but an intimate family dinner. Only Arthur, Marcus, Lisa, Ezra, and myself would be present. The stakes were higher than ever. System final quest, the golden cage. Face the Everton family together.
Get
Ezra to publicly declare his future intentions with you. Reward, the final jackpot, payout of $5 million and permanent relationship blocking. User underscore 221. This is the final boss fight, guys. If she pulls this off, she's not just a millionaire, she's the future matriarch of the Everton Empire. System underscore pro. Keep your composure. Marcus will try to use the formal atmosphere to intimidate you. Let Ezra lead, but step in when necessary to show your worth. I wore a simple but elegant deep emerald silk dress that Lisa had personally sent to my dorm that morning, along with a note. Wear this. Make my brother look good. When Ezra picked me up, he looked at me for a long time without speaking.
He was
wearing a dark charcoal suit, his hair styled casually but neatly. He looked older, more mature, carrying the weight of a man who is ready to claim his inheritance on his own terms. He held out his hand as I stepped into the car. I took it, and this time he didn't let go, resting our joined hands on the gear shift as he drove. The Everton family estate was a sprawling, historic manor nestled in the hills, overlooking the city. Inside, the dining room was lit by soft candlelight, the table set with antique silver and crystal. Marcus Everton sat at the head of the table, his expression as unreadable as ever. Arthur sat at the other end, looking highly amused by the entire situation, while Lisa sat to the side, sipping her wine with a lazy elegance. Sit, Marcus said, gesturing to the two empty chairs. We sat down. The silence was heavy, broken only by the quiet clinking of silverware as the staff served the first course. I received the signed racing division papers from my lawyers this afternoon, Marcus said, looking directly at Ezra. I must admit, Ezra, I didn't think you had the maturity to negotiate for majority control. It was a clever move. It wasn't my move, Ezra said, his voice cold and steady. He didn't look at his father. Instead, he reached under the table and squeezed my hand. It was Mia's. If it were up to me, I would have let you rot in your boardroom. Marcus's eyes flashed with anger, but he controlled himself, turning his gaze to
me.
Miss Madden, Marcus said, his voice dripping with condescension. You've proven yourself to be quite the negotiator. The deed to the Evervale property has been transferred to your name. You are now the official owner of a piece of prime real estate. I assume this means your services to my son are concluded? I felt Ezra's grip on my hand tighten to the point of pain.
He was about to
stand up, about to throw the table over, but I gently pressed my thumb against the back of his hand, signaling him to wait. I looked at Marcus, my face completely calm. Our agreement was about the racing division and the orphanage, Mr. Everton, I said smoothly. My relationship with Ezra is not an asset you can liquidate. Arthur let out a quiet chuckle from the end of the table. Well said, girl. A relationship built on a dare, Miss Madden? Marcus sneered.
We all know how
this started. A game of truth or dare at a college party. You targeted my son for his wallet, and he used you to annoy me. Let's not pretend this is a grand romance. The words felt like a cold bucket of water thrown over me. He knew. Of course he knew. He had probably run a full investigation on the party where the dare took place. I looked at the floating red comments, which were spinning wildly in front of my eyes. User underscore 441, he's trying to break her confidence.
He wants her to feel like a fraud.
System underscore pro. This is the critical moment. The truth is your only weapon.
Do.
Not deny the dare. Embrace it. I took a deep breath, looking Marcus straight in the eye. It did start as a dare, I admitted, my voice echoing clearly in the quiet
room.
I was broke, terrified of losing the only home I had, and Ezra was the arrogant rich boy everyone wanted to see humiliate me. I took the dare because I had no other choice. I turned my head to look at Ezra. His eyes were wide, filled with a sudden, silent tension, waiting for my next words. But when I got to know him, I continued, my voice softening. I realized he wasn't the arrogant prince everyone thought he was. He was lonely, stubborn, and desperately looking for someone who would see him for who he actually is, not for his family's name. I fell in love with the boy who gave me his championship helmet because he wanted me to be safe. I fell in love with the boy who drives too fast but holds my hand like I'm the most fragile thing in the world. The dining room went completely silent. Even Marcus looked slightly taken aback by the raw honesty in my voice. Ezra stared at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. A bright, burning warmth appeared in his dark eyes, a look of such absolute, pure devotion that it made my heart ache. He stood up, pulling me up with him. I don't care how it started, Ezra said, his voice ringing with absolute, unyielding authority as he looked at his father. But I'm telling you this now, Marcus, Mia is not going anywhere. She is my future, and she is the only person who will ever carry the Everton name beside me. If you have a problem with that, you can find yourself a new heir. System notification. Final target declaration achieved. Relationship locked permanently. System_pro. Ding. Final jackpot unlocked. Payout $5 million. Total balance $8,070,235.05. User_999. We did it. Millionaire Mia is official. Ezra is hers forever. Fairy_godmother. I'm literally crying in the club right now. They look so beautiful together. Arthur stood up from his seat, raising his glass of wine toward us. To the future Mrs. Everton. May she keep my grandson from destroying too many supercars. Lisa raised her glass as well, a brilliant, genuine smile on her face. Welcome to the family, Mia. We desperately needed someone with actual brains around here. Even Marcus, seeing the absolute defeat of his plans, let out a slow, defeated sigh, taking a sip of his wine in silent acceptance. A month later, the autumn leaves were falling thick and fast over the newly renovated courtyard of Evervale Home. The old, leaking roof had been completely replaced with a modern, energy-efficient structure. A brand new art studio sat in the corner of the yard, filled with high-quality supplies and natural light, where the children were currently painting under the guidance of a local art teacher I had hired. I stood on the porch, holding a warm cup of cocoa, watching them. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, looking at the banking app. The balance sat comfortably at over $8 million, enough to ensure the survival of Evervale for generations to come, and more than enough to fund my own dreams of opening my own gallery. But as I looked at the screen, the bright red floating comments that had guided me for the past month began to slowly flicker, turning from red to a soft, fading gold. System_pro. Mission completed, Mia. You have successfully navigated the system, secured your future, and found the real jackpot. User_102. We're leaving now, Mia. Be happy with your racing prince. Rich girl 99 will miss you. Take care of Ezra, okay? He really is a softy. Fairy_godmother. Live your best life, Mia. You earned every bit of this. Goodbye, I whispered to the empty air, watching the golden letters dissolve into the autumn breeze, leaving my vision completely clear and normal for the first time in weeks. A pair of warm, strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind, pulling me back against a familiar, solid chest. What are you looking at? Ezra murmured, his chin resting on my shoulder, his warm breath tickling my ear. I smiled, leaning back against him, letting my head rest on his shoulder. Nothing, just the future. He turned me around in his arms, his dark eyes looking down at me with that lazy, arrogant, but deeply tender expression I had grown to love. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, beautifully wrapped box, pressing it into my hand. What is this? I asked, raising an eyebrow. More allowance? Shut up, he muttered, his ears turning pink. I saw this at a gallery in town. It's a vintage sketch pad with handmade paper. I thought you could use it to draw something other than my face. I don't know, I teased, looking up at him. Your face is my best-selling subject. Is that so? Ezra's lips curved into a dangerous, confident grin. He leaned in, his lips hovering just inches from mine. Then you better keep drawing me, bossy. Girlfriend. Because I'm not letting you look at anyone else. As his lips met mine in a sweet, lingering kiss, the autumn wind swept the golden leaves around our feet. The game was over. The comments were gone. But as I held Ezra close, listening to the steady, rapid beating of his heart, I knew I had already won the only jackpot that ever truly mattered.